device, it was up to 64%, which is
When
very
did
close
that
to the
revised
70.
announcement come out, and how did the stock react to it?
It came out shortly, so the big dip, so on the paper you see like the little E at the bottom, so the second to last from the right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it came out there, just a little bit after that earnings call. And then, like September 28th, I believe, is when that revised letter came out.
Okay. So,
So it dropped again? Is that where?
when was their last earnings report?
Quarter two is in September 31st.
Their year end is March 31st.
Okay, so it was the end of September is that last little E, and you see stock price kind of hook and
Right.
recovery since that date.
Right, and it's kind of all happened at almost the exact same time right there, so it's hard to tell. The letter came out on the 28th, earnings came out on the 31st.
Okay, but it still looks like a little bit of a delay before any sort of response to it. Okay, continue.
So that just talks about why it's so important to actually give this device to the correct people, why it's important to train physicians and who to give this device to and who not to. So there is an alternative to this.
Yeah, so what they've been using for a long time now, and it is a lot cheaper of a solution, is this device called the intra-aortic balloon pump. It's been used since the 80s, but it really does not show the same, I guess, like rates of success that the Impella does. They're after discharge, like actually either getting out of the hospital or getting this thing out of your heart. There's been twice as many like cases of drastic effects afterwards, and it's a lot older technology.
If that balloon pops, you are in trouble. This is comparing that.
Right. So they have this metric called composite death stroke, MI, whatever that is, and repeat revascularization. So these are all bad things that can happen, I guess, during when you're having some sort of like cardiac event. And compared to the Impella, we see about a 29% reduction in like these adverse effects happening during any sort of heart operation or serious effects.
Right. And it's especially important because the further time post procedure. So by this time you're home, you're not at the hospital anymore. Things would still go wrong with that old balloon pump, and we've really reduced that. I mean, that's where you're more likely to die versus in the hospital versus at your home. Like, no, it's just a little bit of heart pain, right? So how do they get the product out there? They do sell directly to hospitals, or they do sell through distributors in some foreign countries. They have 554 employees working through this, through those different fields of worldwide sales, clinical sales. 111 of those are in Europe, 443 in the US and Canada. So the clinical support, the people that are going and training doctors on how to use this device, they're primarily registered nurses and other personnel that have considerable surgery experience or experience in the cath lab, which is when they would do the angioplasties.
Okay, so in 2017, they began to commercialize their products in Japan. So they've been expanding into international markets. Japan was interesting because it requires a whole set of different, I guess, regulatory approval from their own, I don't know what it's called, Ministry of Health, something.
Yeah, it's a CE.
Right. So basically, once they got that for their Impella CP, that's the product they market the most, that became available in 2019, and they saw a pretty good increase in international revenue. It went up from 67 million to 104 million, and that was just after starting their operations in 2019. So that should get to.
So they have not a lot of lawsuits, but they have a couple lawsuits going on over patent litigation.
Sure. So the Abbott Labs, which is actually a competitor to these guys, they're looking into a lot of the same technology. One of their subsidiaries, Thoratech, challenged a number of company-owned patents. Abiomed says that these won't affect them because they are patents that are in the pipeline. Or
they did just put a little thing on their website It's in Germany is where this is going on. The German courts have ruled in favor of Abiomed. And a lot of what Thoratec was saying is, like, you're infringing on our patents, but their product wasn't on the market, so they didn't have a lot of merit, I think is kind of how the court went about that. So Thoratec seems to be pretty well handled for the time being.
Yeah. A little bit of a more tricky one is this copyright infringement claim from Ket, who's a subsidiary of another competitor. So they're basically saying that the Impella itself infringes with, I guess, certain of these objects that they're using in their own manufacturing. But they also say they don't actually have any commercially available products that have these, I guess, things in them. It hasn't really gone to any sort of patent litigation court yet, so the outcome of that is unknown, but this admission here doesn't look too good for them.
Yeah, the only thing the company says, they believe the allegations are without merit, plans to defend itself vigorously. There is a couple more recently in the news. So last year, a group of not a group of shareholders, but some shareholders have started suing Abiomed because they say that during 2018, they didn't revise their guidelines correctly for the revenue earnings, and so they lost money, or they were misleading shareholders, is where that's going. And that's pretty new. That's only come out in the past couple of days, so I don't have a lot for that. But that is something that's there. I think that is, yeah, if you have questions, I'm sure there are some.
You mentioned that, what was it, the Impella 2.0 was the one that was approved in every single market?
Yeah, that's their very first product, yeah.
Oh, 2.5, I'm sorry. Okay, so in the pie chart, it's at the 2.5. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine, yep.
Do you think the shareholders suing and lawsuits are gonna like have an effect on?
Yeah, if they do actually get to sue them, if they do find that there is cause for this lawsuit, then I'm sure that will affect them. They're gonna have to pay some sort of fine, probably, I don't know, reimburse those shareholders for whatever damages, but I don't know enough about that type of law.
Has that
I
happened
don't know if it's
before?
what they're supposed to do, but in the 10K they said that it doesn't have any merit and that they plan to defend themselves vigorously. So
Has that happened before where shareholders have like sued the company, like the stock dropped, it's your fault, give me your money back?
this company or just companies?
So the argument here is that management provided guidance, like earnings guidance, like forward-looking statements being like, we're going to earn, like, this is our estimated EPS, like next quarter, et cetera. And when they received new information, they didn't revise those EPS targets. So then you hear analysts continue to say, like, we think the stock will perform like this based on that kind of guidance that they were provided. So it's not that you can't sue just because the stock doesn't perform appropriately, but if management received or had material information and didn't revise their estimates or share that information appropriately with shareholders, then that there is a basis for a lawsuit.
Has it happened before?
This kind of lawsuit? Yeah.
Okay. Do they win? Or who wins? Does the shareholders win?
You know, I don't know what the outcomes are on average. It would be something I'd have to look into more, but lawsuits on behalf of shareholders are actually more common than you'd think, especially less so in smaller stocks like this, but like in larger stocks that are held especially by activist investors, you tend to see a lot of like litigation, like use of the court system to kind of compel companies to change or do something differently. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good data point on that one, but it's not like completely uncommon. Question, first of all, your target price is pretty close to the current trading price.
Right. I thought maybe that price to book was bringing a little bit down. Maybe that wasn't the best metric to use. I did do it without that, and it came out to 237. I instead weighted the PE 20%. I put in their historical growth rate, according to Bloomberg, is about 30%. So that's what I stuck with. The Excel sheet came up to like 24%. But I went with the Bloomberg one, so that brought that FCFE up more. I'm not sure. I didn't want to go more than previous, like their historical average, even though they are expanding, simply because, I mean, things like this patent litigation could put a damper on things. They're gonna have to funnel money into court hearings, so that probably will take a little bit of an impact there. They've also been putting more money into R&D, so that might soak up a little bit of their revenue as well.
So, just quickly looking at some of their like information, it looks like they have a growing number of patents. Are they developing? Are these related patents to their current commercialized technology, or like where are they headed? Like, what's the direction in the future?
They, in their 10K, I can't find a specific breakdown of their patents. It doesn't list it by product, it doesn't list it by device or anything like that. It just says our patents expire in a range from 2019 to 2036. I tried looking on their website. I was considering trying to jump into like I don't know if the government patent website will, if you can search it, but even then I assumed a device would have multiple patents on it and it would be difficult to track down.
My guess is a lot of their patents are, they have a whole lot of like supporting technology for this. Like there's the Impella like 5.0 with Smart Assist technology, and that's a whole separate thing. So I would bet that a lot of these patents are just kind of either developing new Impella technology because they have a lot of lines of this thing and they've only been doing it for a little while. So they're probably going to put out new ones, or they're going to put out more support technology for their older versions of the Impella.
Typical patents in the United States last for 20 years, so I would assume that the first products are the ones like the 2.5 or the 2.0 would be the first ones that patents would expire. I don't think the CP, which is the majority of the revenue, would be on the close end of this.
So, when a company is growing at this kind of growth rate, like some of the skills you need in order to manage a larger company are a little different than those that you need to manage a small kind of startup company. And it's actually one of the risks they identify in their 10K is managing their growth. So, did you come across anything they talked about where they're kind of building those capabilities to manage their growth appropriately?
I actually didn't see anything of them talking about that. They do list their risks pretty dryly like that, but they don't delve into a lot of what their strategy is.
And then what's their financing strategy? Because it doesn't look like they maintain much, if any, debt.
Right. They do have a lot of like, they put a lot of their money into like short-term marketable securities. But yeah, they don't have any long-term debt. They've used, I think they financed a little bit of debt to purchase their new corporate headquarters, but that's really the only tick that we found in there. So it seems like for the most part it's just from their straight revenues is where they're getting all their money to expand.
So, do you think this company's a takeover target?
Could be. I would have to, I guess we have the DVD down. I'd have to look at who owns the majority of their shares. I didn't look at that, but I could see who owns the most and if that's something that people are working on.
Yeah, I would look at their share, their largest institutional shareholders. How long have they been publicly traded?
They were established in 1981. It has to be at least 5 years since I found 5-year data on them. I think at least 10 years is what I would estimate. Yeah.
It looks like a lot of their R&D expenses and their new products coming out are just improved existing products. They're just changing things like
Right.
the cameras that are on them and things like that.
One of the new ones, the BTR, it's essentially a device that you're actually going to get. So most of these devices aren't left in for more than 12 days. They're a short-term solution to help your heart recover because they believe that sending you home with your heart is better than sending you home with an artificial one. The BTR is going to be, whenever it comes out, it's going to be a year-long device that you can leave in and can be monitored remotely through devices at the hospital. So that's, I think, the biggest change in their product line, but you are right. For the most part, what they do is, the big thing they've improved on these is blood flow. So the 2.5, I believe it's 2.5 liters of blood can be pumped through this device in a minute, or I believe in a minute. And then for the most part, those numbers go up. So the 5.5, I think, is 5 liters. The 5.5 is 5.5 liters. I can't remember what the specifics on CP is. They stopped using numbers, but essentially those numbers seem to correlate to how much blood can go through there.
So you talked a little bit about how they have better outcomes than the existing competitor, right? The balloon, whatever piece. In terms of kind of education and training to use this product, is that a barrier to adoption?
Yeah, it is. There is training that goes into this, and that is something they mentioned in their 10K. There's no guarantee that doctors are going to want to learn to use this product, or that they'll be able to obviously use it effectively. So that's why their clinical sales team is the most important to what they do, because they're the people that are going to these hospitals and saying, hey, look at this device, look at the heart rate or the mortality rates, this is how you use it, you should probably use it, and try and sell them on that. We sell the products to a hospital, and then they have it on stock, right? We don't know if they're going to use it or when they're going to use it, but that goes into a little bit of their payment scheme. So the doctor, when they do this surgery, the way they get paid for it is pretty confusing, but essentially they get paid a separate fee to actually perform the surgery on this device, and it's, the way they put it is that if that fee doesn't cover essentially their time in their minds of what it would take to learn and what it would take to actually use this device, they probably won't go about doing that. So it's kind of it's up to the hospital to almost keep their costs low enough that the doctors feel like they can still make money for the hospital and for themselves by using this product.
Okay. So you guys focused a lot on the technology itself, and it's supported by some attractive demographic trends. I think I'd like to have just a slightly more in-depth focus on maybe some of their managerial capabilities, like if we think they're a takeover target, because they're a small company that does kind of focuses on one technology.
Okay.
So that is a possibility. Or if we think they are really going to build out all the capabilities, which includes like having the support staff that goes and trains doctors and doing all these things in these markets.
Would you look like their CEO's experience to kind of get a handle on that? Because I don't know that information I didn't find in their 10K, so I don't know where to find that managerial capabilities.
I mean, CEO experience, yes. I think see if there's any sort of like investor presentations or anything on their website that maybe gives a fuller picture than just the 10K.
Okay.
And then I think I just want to hear a compelling case for why buy something that's trading pretty close to its target price. And that seems like, despite the relatively modest beta, seems to actually have had quite a lot of volatility just looking in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
So what would make this attractive, given the kind of wide range where it's been trading in the past year? Last question. If we were to purchase a Biomed, what would we sell? What would you want to sell?
So we were going to look at one of the ones that was overweight here. Gosh, which one? I forgot. Give me just a second.
so 4 of these are pharmaceuticals, not even the same
Right.
chemistry.